attending a conference where Bill Hybels was the principal speaker. He's was the head of Willow Creek, sadly now disgraced, ex-head of Willow Creek. But he said, what verses does a church stand by or fall by? And there must have been about 300 of us there, and none of us could answer what he was asking. And he then shared Matthew 18, verses 15 to 20. And it's about confronting individuals who have done wrong. And we're never, ever that good in confronting individuals, especially in the church, and especially when it comes to safeguarding issues as well. We tend to keep our mouths shut and see no evil, talk no evil, and hear no evil. But I won't be talking about that so much this morning. I'll be talking about the passage read out to us majestically, I might add, Paul, the Romans passage, thank you. Paul speaking about Paul. Now, in the opening few verses of chapter 13, Paul talks about love. It's mentioned 5 times in 3 verses. The need to love one another, and love is the fulfillment of the law. So what is this love that the Apostle Paul talks about? Well, I think first of all, Paul's trying to draw attention to Jesus. It's only Jesus who showed what perfect love was about, and so fulfilled God's law in the way that God intended. This is where I get slightly technical, so if you want to fall asleep for a couple of minutes, then feel free to. In Greek, everybody now falls asleep, the word love can be translated 4 different ways. But here the Greek word is agape, which is the same word used by Jesus in that famous verse in John 3:16, God so loved the world that he gave his only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. When Jesus was asked what is the greatest commandment, Jesus said, love, agape. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it, he says, love, agape. Love your neighbour as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments. In verses 11 to 14 of the passage read out, Paul gives us another reason for living the Jesus way. And that is that Jesus will come again to judge the living and the dead, which we're reminded of every time we say the creed. In the passage it says, the night is nearly over, the day is almost here. Now, I don't know when Jesus is coming again. I think you've got more chance of winning the Euro Millions lottery than finding out when Armageddon is happening. Nobody knows, not even Jesus himself. However, that hasn't stopped some crazy predictions, and I just relate just some few. Jehovah's Witnesses have proclaimed the end of the world in 1874, 1878, 1914, 1925, 1932, 1941, 1975, and 1994. These days, they've got the message. Jehovah's Witnesses say the end is soon. Then there's Nostradamus, whose prophecies, if indeed they can be called prophecies, forecast the end of the world as we know it we've all been there, 1999. How many of you can remember the switch over to the millennium? How many of you bought the Microsoft bug fixer for when the computer switched over to the year 2000? Everybody, I say everybody, I think Microsoft must have made a massive profit there. And a few people thought that it was going to be the end of the world in 2000. There's another chap, Harry Camping, an American Christian radio host, predicted that the end of the world would happen on the 21st of May 2011. However, that conflicted with another favourite of the time, the Mayan prediction of the end of the world, which was the 21st of December 2012. Camping said that God gave him a sign, and he was able to effectively predict the end of the world in that time, May 21st, 2011. He made another prediction in 1994 would be the end of the world. That was false. 2011 was false. Then he changed his mind, and instead of saying May the 21st, he said, I'll go for October the 21st, 2011. Oh, still the same. And this guy is listened to by millions in America. This is the same country where a certain individual said to get rid of coronavirus, drink bleach, and some people did. Stephen Hawking, 2018, hedged his bets by saying the end of the world would be, any guesses? 2,600, 2,600. He then thought by 2,600, our technology would have progressed so much that we would have been in spaceships inhabiting different worlds that would cope with human beings, etc. And as recently as this August, a conspiracy theorist blog has stated that the coronavirus pandemic is simply a rehearsal for the imminent end of the world, starting in America. I could go on and on and on and on. What Paul is driving at in the last few verses of this passage, however, is behaviour. Because nobody knows when the Lord will come again. And Paul's challenge to his readers, to you, to me, is to live the life that Christ meant for you in the here and now. We are more along the road of salvation than Paul's original readers, so the challenge for us is to live in the light of that salvation, with our lips, our hearts, and with our souls. None of us knows when Jesus will come again, so we have to be ready for that second coming. Every day might be our last on earth, so the way that we live now is a matter of great importance and urgency for all people who call themselves Christians. We need to put on Christ every day and live as Christ has lived. A large part of Paul's message to the church in Rome and to most of the churches to whom he wrote was to encourage the people in how to live, how to behave, and what to do in response to God's gracious gift to them and to the world. It seemed clear to the apostle that if you live your life as if you're going to meet God face to face anytime, if you live your life confident that God's kingdom has already begun, if you live your life knowing that the relationship you have with God is more important than any other thing in your life, well, if you live your life that way, then your behaviour ought to reflect that this is what you believe. It wasn't about doing something right in order to win God's approval. It's about faith. Faith in God's actions, faith in God's love, and faith in God's promise of that steadfast relationship with us. But faith, as we know, isn't just about believing. Faith is also about doing, acting, and working. That's what Paul was trying to get across. In God's kingdom, in the here and now. Doing the work of Christ in the place where we are. Responding to that free gift of God's love. That's what we have to do. When Paul says, clothe yourselves with Christ in verse 14, what does he mean? Well, I think he's drawing on what Jesus shared in Matthew 5, 6 and 7, the to-be attitudes. It's something that I've said before, that being generous is a better way to live. Forgiving people and not carrying around bitterness is a better way to live. Having compassion is a better way to live. Pursuing peace in every situation is a better way to live. Listening to the wisdom of others is a better way to live. And being honest with people is a better way to live. That way of thinking is not weird, it's not strange, it is simply living the Jesus way. It is simply living God's love. How do I measure up to it? How do you measure up to it? I'll leave it to you to discuss that and pray about that to God in silence in your own time. Amen.